Hello everyone, Stropes here again. Exciting day. We are here with our first Shadows of the Galaxy booster box opening. I had really good luck with Spark of Rebellion. If you watched those videos, you'll remember that I pulled a Showcase Krennic and a Showcase Grand Inquisitor. So I feel like I've spent all of my luck that I will ever have for this game or maybe any other games, but we'll see how it goes here. If the drop rates are the same as Spark, I know they don't have like drop rates for all variants of all cards on their website, or at least they did not used to. But due to a little bit of community effort, a little bit of sleuthing, they were able to kind of pull together the drop rates of other cards, and it kind of just follows from common sense, right? Where hyperspace foil legendary cards are rarer than hyperspace foil rares. I believe on the website it just used to say like hyperspace foil and then give you like a kind of average of them all together. But just for a quick recap, in case you were not used to or don't remember, I did not remember. I had to go back and look it up. Showcases are 1 in 288, and the next most rare are hyperspace foil legendaries at 1 in 200 packs. Hyperspace foil rares at 1 in 65, and then it kind of like goes down from there. So you can see that rares, right, were 1 in 65 versus legendaries, which were 1 in 200. To give you a little bit of comparison, though, a regular foil legendary card is 1 in 70. So a regular frame, standard frame foil legendary is about as rare as a hyperspace foil rare rarity card, if that makes any kind of sense. Other than that, I think I'll go over a little bit of a market update since I had not, at least for people who may be newer to card games. There's a lot of people who like did not play Magic, did not play other games, and maybe coming in with a little bit of not a whole lot of knowledge about pre-orders, that kind of a thing, like how all of that stuff kind of works. I just wanted to go over it a little bit just to give people like a little bit of an idea, especially if I just do like a little bit of market speculation. I think it is worth remembering and keeping in mind that the most expensive rare card in Spark of Rebellion, just for like to gauge, for this next set, the most expensive card rare in Spark and standard frame is K2SO at 950, and right after that you get Red 3 at 930. Immediately after that, though, you have a pretty precipitous drop for U-Wing at mid $6.50. So pretty big drop. And then a whole lot, like most cards outside of the top, 5 or 6, just start to go way down right after that. You've got a number of cards. You got at about $5, you've got For a Cause, Fire Spray, Spark. But after that, you get down into less than 4. Cards like Seventh Sister and stuff like that. So just keeping in mind, like overall with that I think some rares, especially the playable rares in the next set, like Wrecker, Maul, are pretty inflated, right? Like the most played competitive rares do not even break $10. So those ones that you see selling for like 15, more than that. And this makes sense though, right? When you think about Magic, think about pre-orders. Of course, cards are inflated 30 to 40%. But if you're new to card games, keep in mind that you may be paying a pretty significant markup. If you want to pay $15 more for your play sets of Mauls, your play sets of Wreckers, go ahead and do that. Some people don't mind, and that's fine for them because they're going to get play use out of it, and they'd rather spend that $15, have it right away. But for people who are trying to be a little bit budget conscious, just keep in mind that a number of cards have pretty inflated prices release week and right after, until we get like a kind of settled competitive meta. So like after some tournament results, we may start to see like some more adjustments to that kind of a thing. But rares in Star Wars Unlimited just tend to be pretty prolific. They're not like super hard to pull. I don't think any of them from this next set are really going to be breaking $10, probably like right around $10. I highly doubt around 15 for very long. Once the people start opening their boxes, start getting all of their cards. So we'll move on to a little bit of a legendary card discussion too. I think you can kind of see that in the legendaries, right? Mandalorian is, I think, sitting around like 30, if I'm remembering right off the top of my head. But like again, some cards are going to be inflated. He's a popular character. Yeah, I think his value is high because of that. I don't think it's because of like any competitive use that we'll be seeing. There's no deck with him that is making waves in any uh, like online tournaments like you see with Take the Initiative. I pay attention to some competitive channels, not a whole lot, just because it takes a lot of time to like keep up on all of those videos all the time. So I try and keep up where I can. I'm not always on the ball, but I don't think there's any competitive decks with Mando either. So I think that 30, I think you're going to see that dropping into the 20s or maybe even below that. There's playable competitive cards from Spark like Change of Heart at 14, Force Lightning around 10, maybe 13. So just because he's a legendary card doesn't mean he's going to be expensive, and especially if he doesn't see a lot of play, um, he probably won't be. So other than that, we've got Poe is at 63, Crate is at 58, and Darksaber is at 42. This pretty closely mirrors what we see right now at the end of Spark's lifespan. We've got Vader at 66, Boba at 55, and Luke at 41. So the main question is just whether you think those cards are going to see the same amount of play as those cards. Vader shot up quite a bit to around 100 when he was seeing major competitive play. The early tournament top cut, I think it was overseas from the U.S. a European tournament. Very first early one was all Bobas playing like as many Vaders and as many Bobas as they could pull or get access to at the time. So there was the thought that Vader was essential for competitive play. And he's still good and still seen, and he's a big part of the meta, but you don't like need him to win, and you don't need him to place. So as soon as it was demonstrated through tournament results that vigilance decks could win, that cunning decks, even like force decks with like Luke could place and still do well and break into top cuts, Vader slowly had been creeping down since. But of course, still very good, which is why he maintains the price that he does. But going forward into the next set, it just depends. If Poe proves to be as a staple in the competitive scene as Vader, he'll probably stick around that price. I think he probably will be. He's a very good card, but it just depends, right? Depends on how that is going forward. I think Crate, though, I was kind of honestly expecting to see maybe in that slot, creeping up to around a price that Poe does, just because Crate Dragon does not have a heroism or villainy aspect, so he slots into any red deck in the top end from now until the end of the game, right? Or at least until we hit rotation. So I think Crate Dragon, it makes sense. Poe, Crate Dragon, those cards. Dark Saber, again, it kind of depends though. I think Dark Saber is the one that I think is a little bit more up in the air. Um, I think you'll be seeing it right, like in Sabine, probably at least one or two copies, probably two copies main deck at least. But it really just depends. If you don't see a whole lot of placing Sabine decks with Dark Saber, might not see may start to creep down like a little bit. It's worth noting that like after Luke at around 40, it drops pretty to like mid 30s. You get like cunning and vigilance, right? So there's a pretty precipitous drop, and then you get into these other right like cards that are like in their 20s, which is kind of what you see in the rest of the set. So I think a lot of the market for the legendaries in the set has kind of, it looks like as a placeholder, people have just kind of kept what was going on in the last set, but remains to be seen like whether that's really going to be accurate or not, and if that's really going to be like a template that you can just slot over into the next set. I am not quite convinced that that is the case, and that's because this set is powered down a fair bit from the first set. First sets for card games tend to be, emblematic of like color combinations, like green and black with Vader, blue and white with Luke, and even the double aspected cards like Vigilance and Cunning and Aggression. Really, you're trying to develop the base state, the base form that these aspects do. Like, what do they do? And kind of like develop that as like a kind of ground floor, a foundational structure for the rest of the game. So the second set kind of like acts as like a supplement to that, right? Like an expansion. So, but because of that, it doesn't have the same groundwork, the same like base frame that was developed with the first set. So I'm not saying that the cards are all bad, they're not, but even just looking at the leaders, right? I mean, you've got maybe like a handful of competitive viable leaders. Speaking of Han, which I just put down right there, right? Han, some other like the Boba Daimyo, a few others, right? I'm just, yeah, like Ray, Kira, some of those other cards, but like the majority of them, like, not. And I don't know if that's like completely different than Spark. There's not like, but again, you would see Chirrut, you would see Luke, you would see Vader, you would see Boba, you would see Iden, you would see Krennic, right? I mean, like, I think it was kind of more approaching like half, right? Versus here, where a lot of the leaders appear kind of powered down or like not as powerful as a lot of the leaders in the other set. And that could be just because we haven't like figured them out yet, and people will figure them out and they'll have just as many. But it's also possible that, as sometimes happens with card games, they're just not as viable as the first foundational kind of a set. We opened Finalizer here. I was really happy to pull this. The capital ship. I'm collecting the capital ships in the game back from Decipher's CCG. I collected a lot of the foils. I think I have all of them besides the promotional Star Destroyer, which is like very, very expensive, but all the, kind of normal, easily accessible ones, I guess I should say. So I've been keeping up on those capital ships in this game too, just to have a kind of like a collection of those. But back to the market a little bit. Just be careful if you're a new player, you're new to the market. Look at historic prices for played competitive cards, and honestly now is probably like an okay time. I know there'll be a reprint later in the year, but prices have settled down a little bit on some of the cards compared to their highs. Again, right, like Vader was 100, now he's in the mid 60s. It is not a bad time to be buying them. If you're going to be playing them or going to events, you may drop later, right, like as it goes on. But also, these cards can adjust because the meta is adjusting. So the prices have calmed down a bit on some of them to where I would not feel bad buying in, especially if you are looking to attend events or anything like that. Of course, if you're not, maybe don't like save off until the reprint hits. But I don't think it's a horrible time either for Spark. I do think you have to be careful buying into some cards from Shadows of the Galaxy. Like I described earlier, I think some of them are inflated, but also I really think some of them are not as high as they should be. For some cards, right? I think that's a double-edged sword. Some of these cards, like Evacuate, I think Evacuate will be a key card in some builds, either now or later. And I was bought a few for, I think it was like $10. I bought maybe another one. I opened one in this box. That looking TIE Phantom looks fantastic in that border. Just wow, some of those cards look fantastic in that hyper frame. But right, I think like some of those cards, if you see like a legendary for $10 that you think might be really good, I mean, pounce on it. I think some of these characters are a little inflated, like main characters, just because they're popular characters and people like collecting cards of popular characters, even if they maybe don't even play the game. Like a Hyperfoil Mandalorian is probably going to be very, very expensive, even if the card is not played at all, right? Because it's a popular character, versus like a Hyperfoil of like an Evacuate, which doesn't depict a popular character. It depicts people running out of a building, right? So I think some of that is going to be affecting prices of some stuff too. So just be mindful of that too, right? If you're new, common sense, right? Iconic characters, cards with iconic characters are going to be a little bit more than cards without them. That's just kind of how it goes. But they'll drop some, especially as people get their packs. Let's look at this pack here. Covert strength. I think they've switched the way that the packs are set up like a little bit. I think the hyperfoils used to be at the end of like the common section. There's the evacuate. Those people running out of that building. I don't know if that scene is from some specific thing, but if you know what it's from, let me know. I Yeah, some of the stuff here are not like completely deep cuts, I guess, but some of it is not as they're a little bit more. I haven't like watched all of Clone Wars and stuff like that, so I'm guessing it's probably from something like that I haven't like watched a ton of, because I know there's like some of the Bad Batch cards and things like that, and I'm not like as familiar with that as from live action stuff. I did start to watch Star Wars Rebels after Spark was coming out though, actually, so maybe I'll learn some of it after that. But I usually like, at least like when I'm like laying all of this stuff out, I try and like I'm just sorting it by like common, uncommon, rares until I get most of my cards in, just to sort it after that and then sell them as lots. In the last set, I sold all of my standard frame foils as one large lot and one uh, non-foil hyperspace, just because like I'm kind of keeping like the standard frame rares, like collecting those, trying to get play sets of cards just like in standard frame, just to have like playable tournament cards. I don't really want to chase these like hyper frames and try and get like play sets of those. I just want like hyper foils for Twin Suns. So it's either, for me personally, like as a player, it's either like standard frame or hyperspace foil. And other than that, I don't care all that much. I think I'll wait a little bit to sell though, maybe on this set, because I think I sold pretty early when I was selling my cards from Spark, and I sold like a hyperspace. I know I had like a Falcon and maybe some other like rares in there and legendaries and like half play sets of commons and uncommons, and I got like about $40 for it, which I think was the price of just the Falcon by itself at its height. So I might hold off, try and see how stuff shakes out before just like immediately putting everything up. But that's it for the video today. I hope you liked it. I'll have some more coming out soon, and I'll try and keep some market videos going in the future, especially as the meta shakes out and stuff changes. But thank you for watching. Goodbye.